So when you're finished with the sketch that you plan to use for your Metal Repousse, the metal on the back side, you want the color that you plan to use facing up. On this particular piece, I'm going to use the bronze side, and I will line it up and attach a little piece of tape on the back side to hold it in place. Like so. It doesn't take a lot of tape, just a little bit will hold it in place. I want to use a piece of cardboard underneath of it. This is a soft enough surface that it will allow the metal to indent when I draw over the surface of it. I'm going to be using a regular pencil, not a mechanical pencil. You could also use a ballpoint pen, and that works well too. And then what I want to do is I want to trace the lines that I have drawn onto the metal through the paper. It's kind of hard to keep track sometimes of the lines that you've done, but if you don't know for sure, if you run your finger over the surface, you'll be able to fill the lines that have been incised or indented. Once you've completed the tracing, you can check it and see. You can flip the whole thing over to the back side, and you can see the lines that have been drawn here. If you see anything that looks like it's missing, then you can flip it back over and completely draw those. Mine appears to be done, so I'm going to peel off the tape carefully. I want to not lose my drawing just in case something goes wrong and I need to fix it later. Be very careful not to bend the metal. The front side is the copper side, like I said before. One of the things that you need to be really careful with is you need to make sure that you're not pressing too hard, that it causes it to tear the metal. When you first look at this, you may think, oh, this is done. This is all I needed to do. But that is not the case. There's still a lot more detailing that can be done. If you, for instance, on the eyes, I'd like to make the eyes pop a little bit more. So I'm going to flip it to the opposite side, and I'm going to color inside of the eyes as if though I was shading them in. And I'm using this little wooden tool, which is a stylus. You can also use a dull pencil if it's a regular pencil, not a mechanical one, if you need to do larger areas. And I just keep working it back and forth. I want the forehead to pop out just a little bit more, so I'm going to flip it over and use the back side. The back side, if you're shading in on the back side, will make it all popped forward, and if you do it on the front side, it's going to indent. So I'm going to make this texture here so you can see what texture, the little textures that I'm drawing here. And it also will allow it to pop out forward. And when I flip it over, you can see that his forehead is now popping forward, and there's that texture on his forehead. The eyes are popping forward and so on. Up here I have a very large area, and so I'm going to use the pencil to kind of shade it in. kind of smooth out that part of the wing. But when I flip it over, it's going to look like it's a wing. It's popping up, and it has little feathers. You can see just a little bit of the feathery lines. So continue working on popping out the different areas that need to pop forward, like here, this part of the wing. And when I go to the front side, it'll be popping up from the surface a lot more than it did before. These feathers are should be pushed back a little bit, so I'm going to texture them from the front side so that they look like they're flying back behind him rather than being popped up quite so much forward. And then it gives it the illusion that the wing is going back, like you can tell what part is forward and what part is going back. I can also do around the edges to kind of sharpen it up a little bit. And you just have to be really careful not to push too hard, but always make sure that you have a piece of cardboard underneath of it so that you can give it that depth that you're looking for, that you're trying to get. There we go. We're starting to see some dimension to it. Once the Metal Repousse is finished, if you want, you can use some black paint to tint inside of the texture, and you just apply the black paint to the surface of the metal, and then use a sponge. Make sure the sponge is a little bit wet but not soggy, and wipe the surface, but not completely soaking it. You're just wiping it off, and you'll notice that the lines, it'll leave the texture showing inside the lines that you've indented into the repousse. And make sure not to press very hard with the sponge. And you can see how that improves and increases the detail.